We're joined on the phone and via Skype by Matthew Hoh. He's been a guest on the show before, and he actually made the best of 2010 on the David Pakman Show. Good to see you, Matt.
Good to see you, David. Thanks.
So let me go, since we talked to you over the summer and we got kind of your whole background, I'll go through your timeline in the military and the State Department. Tell me if I'm missing anything, and then I just have a ton of stuff to ask you about.
Okay, sure.
So from 04 to 07, you were a Defense Department civilian on a reconstruction team. Then you were a Marine Company commander in Iraq. In 09, you were the State Department's senior rep in Afghanistan's Zabul province and political officer in Nangarhar province. And in September of 09 is when you resigned, can we say in part in protest to the war?
Oh, yeah, or wholly.
Wholly.
In protest of... not so much the war per se, because I do believe the United States should be involved in that region of the world, and we have interest there. But more, in fact, of the policy that we were pursuing there, just the waste of lives and resources we were expanding, basically entangled in someone else's civil war. We should be involved in the region, but not necessarily, with the amount of expenditure in lives and resources that we've seen over the last few years.
Yeah, you said in a progressive.org article I read, you said, we're propping up a government that isn't worth dying for. What do you mean by that?
Well, that's basically, it's a country, Afghanistan's been at war in one shape or another since the mid-'70s, late '70s. And so what we found ourselves in is we found ourselves basically backing one side in what you can call a civil war. What is a civil war? Again, that goes back several decades, and just in various iterations, and alliances change, but more or less, the country's been in a horrible mess for many decades now. And so now, 9 years after our involvement began, in 2001, we find ourselves propping up one side of this war. We find ourselves in the midst of a conflict that goes back decades and back generations, and we find ourselves entangled in this at local levels, at provincial levels, and at national levels. So on that broader, larger level, we're propping up the Karzai government, which is composed of drug dealers and war criminals, and they're not. There's no benefit to us propping them up it is worth the cost that we're expending there.
And when you say not worth it, would it not be worth it to prop up either side in the sense that it's not worth getting involved in other countries' civil wars, or would propping up the other side be better in your opinion?
Well, no, because you'd just be propping up the other side at the expense of another side. And again, it's a conflict that doesn't concern us. It's a conflict that's not about us. It's a conflict that's not about Al-Qaeda. It's a conflict that goes back again, trace it to the overthrow of the king in 1973. You can basically trace the origins of this, and other people can trace it farther back than that. You
mentioned Al-Qaeda, and I want to get to that part in a second. But first, you also talk about Karzai. Now, I want to get eventually to your thoughts on the Karzai-Iran ties, but because Wikileaks has actually brought a lot of that to the forefront, I'm curious to hear from you, since you were in the region diplomatically and militarily. What's your thought on the cables that were released? What's your thought on WikiLeaks? I mean, give me kind of your general sense of good, bad. What do you think?
Well, it's not the Pentagon Papers. It has provided a lot of interesting things to talk about. It's provided a lot of details we didn't know. I think the best description of it I've heard is that, we know what the paintings look like, but, we know what it looked like, but we couldn't see the colors. So with regards to Iraq and Afghanistan, provides a lot of details to things that we already knew.
Yeah.
Again, there was no real purpose behind it. It was just to release the documents for the sake of releasing the documents. There hasn't been that smoking gun, say like the Pentagon Papers were, that shows mass government conspiracy or mass complicity in wrongdoing or any of the things I think that people were hoping it would or expected it would.
I think we're getting close, though. I mean, we've seen only a fraction of the documents, and we've already learned, things that, at least to me, are incredibly damning of the government. I mean, we're hearing about proposed cover-ups of taking the wrong person to a CIA black site and then dropping them off in, I think it was Albania. I mean, there's a long list that we could go through, but I think we're getting close to a real gold mine of damning information. And gold mine may not be the right word because it's not a good thing that this stuff is going on.
Yeah, I mean, it's my thoughts on why it's bad for us, because there's good. I mean, if things are being covered up, or there are things that our government are doing that is immoral or is wrong, that should be investigated and that should be pursued fully. But I don't, first off, I don't believe that Julian Assange and what WikiLeaks has done is this great threat to the United States. I hear some commentators out there, politicians, calling for Assange's execution and other silliness, and that's grossly overinflating. It's irresponsible, and it grossly overinflates what he's done. I mean, it's wrong. But what I think the dangers of WikiLeaks is that one, our government previously did not share information well, among within itself. So if you're an agency that's adjacent to another agency, we don't have very good communication horizontally across our government. And so now, because of WikiLeaks, we're probably going to have less communication being shared within our government for fear of it being leaked. It makes our diplomats' jobs harder because their job is to have candid, confidential conversations with other world leaders or their diplomatic counterparts or whoever. And so that makes it more difficult to have that if there's a fear that those confidential conversations are going to be exposed.
And those are actually the more legitimate concerns. I mean, a lot of what we hear are just completely bogus concerns. Those are legitimate concerns. I happen to think the positive outweighs the negative. Obviously, people can judge that. But if we're going to be concerned about anything, it's that, as opposed to we're putting tons of people's lives at risk. There's no evidence that is the case.
Absolutely. That's really a scare or a fear type of a tactic that people are used to try and claim why WikiLeaks is a national security danger to this country, which it's really not.
To get back to the Karzai-Iran connections, should we be as surprised as some people are acting that those connections exist, or not?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I'm not sure why you'd be shocked that Iran is involved in Afghanistan. They share, like a 700 or 800 mile border. I mean, a couple major rivers flow between them. Excuse me. There's still 1.5 million or so Afghan refugees in Iran. A good portion of all those drugs that Afghanistan exports to the rest of the world moves through Iran. The United States is actively, involved in Afghanistan, as well as Iraq, right? And every time, if you're an Iranian, every time you turn on the television, you hear another American politician saying we should bomb Iran.
You mentioned when we hear politicians say this or that, and when I hear politicians say things are going well in Afghanistan or they're improving or whatever it is, can you talk a little bit about how they're building that frame? I mean, is it from a tour they've been on? Is it from a staff memo that's been handed to them, a PowerPoint presentation that they saw somewhere in Europe? How are they building that? And can we really believe when a certain senator says things are improving here or there?
No, I mean, particularly when almost all the data we have on Afghanistan shows that things have gotten worse. Whether it's our own Pentagon's data that they put out on a monthly, and then and also they put out 2 major reports every year. You see that every metric or every data point that you look at, things have gotten much worse this past year. Or if you look at the information that the UN puts out, or the International Committee of the Red Cross says that Afghanistan is as dangerous as it's ever been. It just one report after another just shows that quantitatively.
But my question is more, when we hear the positive reports, given that appears to be the reality, are these politicians, are they making it up? Is it based on something someone in their staff told them? Where is it? I mean, I'm certain that when you had the chance to speak to people when you were deployed, you tried to paint a more realistic picture. Is that fair to say?
It is. I mean, and that's how I actually got to know Jack Murtha last year, was because I had briefed his staff delegation and said the same things I said after I resigned. And so when I did resign, and Washington Post ran the story and everything else, Jack Murtha said, his staff said to Mr. Murtha, said, "Hey, sir, remember we were telling you about that guy we spoke to in Afghanistan when we were there a couple months ago? This is him. He was saying the same stuff then as he's saying now." What they do, when the politicians visit, or VIPs, or also to the Pentagon, will send over various think tank or journalists or folks who are generally in agreement with them or supportive of them, and they get like these windshield tours. They fly in someplace, they get driven out to a school or to an electrical generation facility or whatever we've spent millions of dollars on, and they get shown it, and they get driven back, and they get flown out, and they get a series of PowerPoint briefings, and everything is going well.
And then it translates into CNN, Fox, MSNBC 5-minute interviews, where that is what starts being the record.
Exactly. You have a guy like Mike Pence from Indiana, who's the third-ranking Republican in the House, he went about Thanksgiving time and came back. He went and visited Bagram, ate chow with some soldiers and airmen in the chow hall, got a series of PowerPoint briefings. Left a day later and came back saying how great the war effort was going and how success is just right around the corner. It's talking points. War is policy. This war is part of our political process here in this country. I mean, we shouldn't be surprised that politicians are quick to say things that they don't have the facts or the substance to back up on, or that they're willing to say things that are generally supportive of what they view as being of help to them politically. And for a lot of
and that's nothing new, obviously.
Yeah, that's nothing new. I mean, that's the same, with, I'm sure all your other guests, you can ask whether you're talking about health care or taxes or the economy or anything. But no, it's a problem. Why is there not more pushback on it? I mean, you can go through year after year, and I wrote a blog on this in the Huffington Post about 2 months ago, where I just took comments from our various commanding generals in Afghanistan since 2004 that basically say the same thing every year. Which is just a little more time, some more troops, a good winter. Offensive will knock the Taliban off balance, and victory will be around the corner. And as we've heard that every year since 2004, I'm not sure why there's not more pushback on it. Also, too, why when people say we're making progress, when the president or anyone else says we're making progress in Afghanistan, or I had this big report in December that the White House put out, it's not backed up by any facts. There's no. The reality of the situation in Afghanistan does not support these assertions that progress is being made. And I think what you see now, too, is that you're as well as you see them saying that progress is occurring or it's right around the corner, is the phrase I keep hearing over and over again. The other thing, too, is you see that they've kicked the can a bit on this, that they say we need another 6 months. We won't know anything for sure until another 6 months.
Right.
Well, when they start with, as soon as the White House releases review of the Afghan strategy back in December, as soon as it came out, that's automatically what the supporters and the pundits who are in favor of this war start saying. Well, we don't know. We won't know for another 6 months. Well, you know what? You've had a year since the president made this decision. You had almost 2 years since the president first surged troops into Afghanistan. A lot of people forget that we sent 21,000 troops into Afghanistan and beginning in March of 2009. It's almost 2 years ago. And on top of that, every year since 2005, ourselves and our NATO allies have doubled our troop presence. I mean, we've increased the amount of NATO forces in Afghanistan by a factor of 5 since 2005, and we have not seen one area of Afghanistan, one district that has gotten better.
Well, it's absolutely
that's sustained.
It's absolutely clear. It's time to get out of there. And I wish I had more time, Matthew. But a pleasure to talk to you again. Former Marine, former State Department official. We'll have you back again soon. Plenty more to talk about. That's for sure.
Yeah, that'd be great. And Happy New Year to yourself and all your viewers and listeners.
Thanks. Same to you, Matthew.
Hey, thank you.
Okay, take care.
All right, bye-bye.